Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
Hey, First Responder Financial Freedom, just chopping it up with Aaron Foster, myself, and Tyler Thrush. Mike's busy taking over the world somewhere, so we're just going to chop it up and say what we got going on. So I actually had a conversation this morning with a buddy of mine. He's doing land clearing and developing in around Clayton and Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And we're just spitballing ideas of developing and clearing land and selling lots or developing the lots or putting campgrounds in our RVs. One of the things around the DC metro area is that there's a lot of rules and regulations about how to zone the property, what can be in that zone. Is it perked? Does it have a well? There's a lot of soil samples got to be done. Other places are more lax on their details. So we were talking about like the benefits of developing different areas with less oversight, I guess is the word. And a lot of the places are good old boys clubs where the mayor has to chime in or the council has to chime in. And a lot of these places for items like tiny houses, they don't have anything on the books and they don't know how to describe these or how to rule on these properties because it's not the cookie cutter that they're used to. So it was a good conversation between me and my buddy Matt this morning. Just good to kind of brainstorm and kick ideas around and figure out what direction to go to next. I know we've been talking about storage units. That's another thing I'm looking at down there. RVs, campgrounds, anything waterfront right now is actually since COVID started, anything waterfront's extremely hot. So I found a couple of plots that are waterfront against a couple of the lakes down there. And one of the other guys in our group, John King, and I talked about his family is digging out an area to sell the sand off. I didn't even know there was a market for it. And their plan is to eventually, after they dig the hole and fill it back in with water, it's a man-made lake or a man-made pond, is creating a campground around that or a RV park or assisted living or developing around it because now you just created waterfront property. So that's all I got really going on right now. I've been taking a couple of swings at a couple of properties, but nobody's really biting right now. It's a kind of a weird dynamic because everybody wants the numbers they were getting 6 months ago, a year ago, but now it seems like because the rates are going up and people don't want to come down in price, things are just kind of sitting more stagnant, which is what we said, 6 months ago was probably going to happen anyways. So I don't know. What about you, Tyler? What you got going on?
I'll go. I have a couple questions for you though. So
sure.
What was I thinking? So as far as where did you find the deals? Were you searching online, relationships, MLS? So
MLS, I was actually trying to talk to one of my captains who I'm hoping will listen to this podcast. JS, that's one of the initials I'm going to give you, is I'm trying to get him to buy his first property. And I gave him the entire breakdown for how DC pays a set amount in each neighborhood. And I showed him, like, you can buy this place, make it your primary residence for a year, and then after a year, Section 8 will pay you $2,500 a month for this property. Now, his holding cost, if it's his primary for the first year or a second primary after the first year, his holding cost is only about $1,200 or $1,300 a month. So he'd make over $1,000 a month profit, and then after 9 months, he would pay it off. So it doesn't work for me because the return on investment is, for me, it was like 31 or 35 months. And I don't want to be out of pocket that long. My buy box is generally 24 months or less. But for somebody else like him, like it's the perfect arena to step into. Just get your feet wet.
Nice. So for me, I'm trying to think. Oh, we got an offer accepted this morning on my last flip. So that's good. But it also means I have nothing currently going. So just trying to find a deal. Same thing. I think a lot of the sellers, you can see there's more urgency on their part, but as far as them being like realistic as far as price, it's not there yet. So I think once we get to where we fill that gap and we meet up, it's going to be a good buyer's market again. We just kind of got to wait it out and see when that happens. So I've turned my ad spend down, not to decrease the amount of ads I'm getting, but I just don't think there's as many people spending money on advertising right now. And so we're getting the same results. So I'm kind of saving money on the ads and getting the same results. And same thing, a lot of tire kickers, but just trying to be patient and see what's going on. I agreed to lend some money today, so that'll be cool out of my IRA. It'll be $60,000 first position note, and it'll be 12% and 2 points. So that'll be cool. So 14% return. And I'll go into more detail. I'll probably do a post on it once it's done. I know people have been asking all of us about private money, so maybe I'll do like this is how I started it. This is how we went to the closing table, and then hopefully in 6 months when it matures, when it's paid off, we can do that one too. So that's it.
So hold on, let's take a step back. So you said it's 14%. A lot of people don't know how to calculate that out. So it's 12% is what you're loaning on, and then 2 points. And then the 12% plus the 2 points equal the 14% return. Yeah. So when I first started trying to look into this stuff, I was like, how are they coming to these numbers? And that makes sense. So a point is 1% of the loan amount.
Correct. And if we want to get any nerdier, why I love private money is most of the time I do my notes for 6 months. So if you can use that money twice in 1 year, you've now created a 16% return in 1 year on your money in your IRA, which is killer. And it's backed by real estate. So I don't know. I really like it. There's risks in everything, but I was looking at stock prices today. I'm like, dude, they could lose a lot too. I was looking, I think one of them was a large blue chip company. I'm forgetting who it was, but they lost 35%. I'm like, well, I can have this secured. I highly doubt I would lose 35%, even in the worst case scenario. So I love it. And that money was just sitting in my IRA. So it's perfect. And then, you know what? We have so today is Monday. We're doing our 90-day accountability in the First Responder Financial Freedom Group. It's kind of cool. First week, everybody reported on Monday. It was good. And then nice. even this week, we're starting to report today. And one of the conversations we had last week, one of the members wrote out their goals as far as daily, weekly, monthly activities. And he kind of was saying, I don't really have a good way to benchmark it, right? So we were just all talking about it, and I suggested, hey, let's make these things actionable steps that you can actually measure to where you can hit your goal. And I think one of them was to complete an Airbnb. And then so I said, well, let's think about how many hours it's going to take you to complete that Airbnb. And then we're going to break that down to a daily number. And as long as you hit that daily number, you should hit your goal in that 90 days. So that was quite cool to see conversations happening, improvement happening, but everybody's taking action. So I'm really interested to see what happens after that 90 days. My goal is to buy one storage facility. I think that's going to be tough. I threw an offer out there last week and I didn't even really get rejected. I didn't even get a response. And I saw the broker marketing the property still. So, but that's the thing. You got to swing the bat, right? I don't care. I'm so used to rejection from the single family space. It doesn't bother me. This to me almost seems better because there's not as much emotion involved. This is not their residence. They may be tied to it, if they built it or something, but this is a business decision for a lot of them. And what I'm noticing is a lot of these that are posted, they're mismanaged. They don't have online payment. They don't have websites. They don't have any of those things. And I think they got into it thinking it was a good idea. And then they realized that it wasn't exactly what they wanted to do, or maybe they weren't equipped to do it, but it's not where they live. So just been doing that, man. And what you did talk about, I was just talking about with my processor this morning too, about rates. So it's kind of funny, people are freaking out about rates right now, and they've actually had a good couple of weeks. And historically, we're in a really good spot for rates. It's obviously not the last 2 years, but they've been dropping to where we're getting people in the mid to high fours, right? That's really not a terrible rate, especially for a first-time home buyer. But I think it's the whole psychology of the last 2 years is really messing with buyers. And I think it's because there's more uncertainty in the market just by the pure nature of people doing price reductions, all of these things to where they're not as willing to jump in. So I'm kind of interested to see where it all shakes out.
So this is a great conversation to have. I don't think 2008 will happen in our lifetime again. And the reason is because that was a different animal than what's going on now. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Everybody's like, I'm going to wait for prices to drop. I'm going to wait for prices to drop. There might be a small pullback, but I think, this is just my personal opinion, I think the pullback will happen in secondary and tertiary markets. I don't think it's going to happen in primary markets. And I think the values of these houses will continue to go up, but not as fast and not as high. So that's just my personal opinion. So I think a lot of the people who are waiting to get into it, you're still pricing yourself out of this market. Now, there might be a stagnation like we talked about when this podcast first started. But I mean, for the most part, I don't think that in the primary markets is going to be affected as many people think. What do you think?
I agree, and it's good. So the one that we just put under contract today, the last flip, it is in a tertiary market, and we listed it like 60, 70 days ago. So what is that? Start of June, let's say. It's May or June right there. And the market was still decent in Boise. This is outside of Boise by an hour. We pushed the value. We had an appraisal done before we started it at 250. So we tried to list it like at 280 just to see what would happen. And then, of course, the contract price today is 250. So we were trying to push it at that time. It came back. We just did a price reduction on Thursday night or Friday morning. And then we had an offer by last night. So that's the thing. This is not like a super hot market. But when we got the price within reason, and we knew we were being unreasonable, we're like, hey, we're going to push it. If we don't get it, we'll write it down to 250. And we even said, hey, if we don't get 250, we're going to flip this into owner finance and we'll leave it. And we'll see what happens. It obviously has to close escrow, but I totally agree with you. And the weird thing is, you said like you're not an expert, right? And I don't claim to be either. But a lot of the stuff I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, logically, if this happens, then what would happen? And that Bruce Norris meeting we had the other day, or his talk, his whatever you want to call it, it was brought up, and it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of people who have low 3% interest rates. There's not a lot of people right now who are motivated to get rid of those interest rates to go get a 4, 5, or 6% interest rate, depending on your credit, into a more expensive house. And so the logic, and again, nobody was like, let's follow the logic. The logic is, if you have more equity, everybody has more equity than they've ever had in the history of the U.S. in their homes, and you do start to get behind on payments, then you could sell and it won't be at a loss. But for everybody else who's just waiting it out, they're not going to do anything. And then you're further hampering inventory that way. And if you don't have a lot of inventory, even if the employment market, all these things start to suffer, do you have the 2008 crash? I don't know, because there was builders building. There was so much inventory at that time. It totally could happen, but right now I don't think so either. And I just read something this morning where they laid it out too, and I was like, dang it, I should have written it down, because it made sense. There's a lot of stuff making sense as to why it won't be that way. But a lot of us, especially in our age bracket, all we have to compare to is 2008. So we think, oh, it's going to be the same thing every single time. But I know what it was. They said every time you had a recession, except for 2008, housing prices went up. That's what it was. Every single time except for 2008. And that was an outlier because you had all the LIRA loans, and that threw it into like a little tailspin for the housing. But yeah, the guy who was talking this morning said he had a graph. It was every single recession you had increase in value in homes, because real estate is one of the safest spots to park your money when you're in a recession. So, I mean, I don't know. I'd be stoked if it went back to like 2020 levels and we just had a flat market for flippers and wholesalers and investors. Like, that's certainty is a good thing. We kind of know what our values are. We know where it's going to be. That's why a lot of the flyover states are so exciting for rentals, because it's not going to be like California or the East Coast. It's just like steady Eddie. It's just going to go, and you're going to rip off the same cash flow almost every single month. So I don't see a 2008 either. I'm interested to see how long this takes to shake out, I guess.
I think the politics are going to play a big factor in this. So 2024 is obviously the next election. We got 2 years. we're going to go through the whole like trash talking and bad mouthing each other and digging up dirt for it'll probably start the next couple of months, especially in the DC area. But whoever takes office is going to determine what the next probably 4 to 6 years look like at least. And it's going to be it's one of those things you guys to really pay attention to what is causing these changes and how you can benefit or hedge your losses with them. So like, I think that the government's going to do regardless if it's Republican or Democrat, I think it's going to be a big push for more Section 8 housing and government funded housing. So I like the idea of having small square foot housing, like 400 square feet, 500 square feet, even 600 square feet, something just small where if they mess it up, you can repair it and replace it within, a week or two, no matter how much damage is done. So I've been looking at that. Like I've been looking at developing areas with tiny homes, which we've had this conversation about before, but I want to be able to, honestly, if I've been looking at different ways to, skin a cat. And if I can do half campground or half RV park and the other half tiny homes or half mobile homes or split it up into 4 sections, like storage units, mobile homes, campground, RV park. Like I think that people who get creative are going to be the ones that benefit from the next couple of years. And you have multiple ways, you create multiple streams of income on one asset. It's just finding out where can I do something like that. So that's what I've been looking at lately is just, can I do, like if you have a car wash, right? A car wash does best in B, C class neighborhoods because a lot of times it's people who can't wash their cars at home or at the apartment complex or whatever it might be, so they go to the car wash. Now, the car wash is going to be somewhere like an A-class neighborhood. They can usually wash the car in their neighborhood, so there's no point to have something like that there. So you have to find the best asset for the best neighborhood and multiple streams of revenue coming from that asset. Like, say you put a vacuum there at the car wash. Say you put a snack machine, a soda machine. Say you put storage there, like lockers where you can store your own cleaning supplies and polish. I think there's a lot of ways to make money, and a lot of people they see one thing and like I can do that, and they don't get creative with how they develop and design whatever they have. Like even at a short-term rental, I've been looking at getting gumball machines because if I put a gumball machine in, it's supposed to be like $200 extra a year. Like it's not going to break the bank, but it's still $200 I didn't have before just for supplying gumballs. Like at the firehouse, we have soda machines outside the firehouse, and that helps pay for stuff in the firehouse for the guys. And I've seen that in multiple places around the country. And it's just you got to get creative on how you get money coming in. And a lot of people, they lack the creativity or they lack the network of people that will push them to get creative. So,
do you guys still do soda bets or no?
What's that?
Oh, so it's funny. In our department, a lot of guys will do like, I'll bet you a soda this, or I bet you a soda that throughout the shift. But I was just thinking that doesn't really happen as much. Not that I've been on super long, but when like my first couple of years, for sure, guys would always use soda bets. You made me laugh because in some stations we have the dispensers, so that keeps everybody honest. But it's always the fridge on the app bay that has the monsters. It never seems with the monsters, and that damn change jar add up.
You get one of those busted machines where it drops 2 and the guy's like,
dude. Exactly. So, and I agree with you. I think adding multiple streams and just doesn't have to be crazy, but dude, $200 a year. I mean, why not? It doesn't really cost you a whole lot more time or money. And it's just one more thing. And I like to think of those things. Okay, now I have $2 more to advertise, or I have $200 more for a course. And just stack that. You're compounding it, right? You can take that $200 and maybe buy something else. And I'm sure for you guys, I know Mike does too, you kind of have to stand out if you want those 5-star reviews. And those little things matter, especially I was thinking that's perfect because when people are bored and they see it, originally they may not want to do it, but I bet you almost every single person that stays in the house is going to buy at least one gumball. So it's kind of funny that it's an impulse purchase.
It is. It 100% is. But it's like, you put 3 different candies in there. You put a chocolate in there, a gumball in there, and like a Skittle in there, like 3 different styles, 3 different flavors, 3 different preferences. And you're going to hit 3 different demographics of people who like sweet and salty, chewy, or whatever. You just had some. So the short-term rentals, like let's talk about that real quick because I've been doing a lot of reading about that and looking at data points. And a lot of people are like, is it the right time to get into short-term rentals? I'm not going to say no. but I'm going to say you need to know the market that you're getting into, and you need to be different. So one of a buddy of mine, he's a Baltimore guy, did a lot of Baltimore investing. He bought a place out in Ocean City, and he did a gorgeous renovation of this place, Sean. And I think he's water block or ocean block. And he's done very, very well for himself this year. Like within 2 years, he'll take in easily six figures, if not twice that. But there's a lot of people that are flooding the markets of short-term rentals. So you're creating because it's the popular thing to do during COVID. So people are buying these short-term rentals, they're putting in the market, and they're making them available. And what's happening is instead of having like 1,000 options to choose from, now you have 2,000 options to choose from. And that's where you get dangerous. Like if you don't stand out, then it makes it an issue. My house I bought specifically because it was a 4-bedroom house instead of a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, which is pretty much standard out there. And I got it for a 3-bedroom house price. So the reason I like it is because it stands out a little bit. It's an A-frame. It's a little bit unique. And it's a 4-bedroom house, so I can house more people. I hit the demographic of bigger families or 2 families. I'm still trying to get away from people trying to throw parties, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But when you're looking at doing a lot of these projects, you got to realize, like, if I spend $150, $250, $300, $400, $500,000 to get in this arena, what's my competition look like, and what's my return on investment look like? Because even this year, like, I wanted to hit the $35,000 income mark, and I'm just like, I was like, 35 is my base point. Like, if I don't hit it, then it's not a big deal. But I would like to do more and better than the last lady that owned it. And I'm just going to scrape by and just barely get the numbers that I want. I'll still make money, but it's not what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to blow her out of the water with an additional $10,000, and I didn't.
Why did you think you were going to blow her out of the water, and why do you think you didn't?
So when I bought the property, I got a hold of her rental history, and her rental history showed that she did a lot of family and friends discounts. She was there a lot of the time herself. So I was like, well, that's numbers that I can put into my pocket. Like, I'm not going to give the discounts to all my friends and family. I'm not going to be using it that much except for my leave periods. So I was like, those numbers where she gave the discounts to somebody else, I'll make the revenue that she missed out on by letting friends and family stay there. So that's one of the reasons that I thought I was going to beat her numbers. But I think those numbers were very much because of COVID, and there wasn't a whole lot of 4-bedroom houses available at that time. That being said, the other property I just made a short-term rental, which was a failed flip because I didn't get the numbers I wanted to turn into a rental property. That house, I got a 3-month renter in there for $17,000 immediately. So it's a contractor who has his subs there staying there who are working on windmills a couple miles away from the property. And they're out on October 30th. When they leave is when it's prime leaf peeping season. So all the leaf changes, all the people will go up there to see the leaf changes. And then it's ski season, and the ski resorts are across the street from my house. So that's going to do better than I thought it was going to. And the other house is not doing as good as I expected it to. So, I mean, it's all a educated gamble, educated guess what you're going to do. You just have to educate yourself as much as possible to minimize your potential losses. So, I mean, sometimes it's dumb luck, and sometimes it's skill. So I guess it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, but like you said, it sounds like you analyzed it based off of her numbers. And were those pre-COVID numbers that you were looking at too?
Nope, they were COVID numbers. So I looked at the last 2 years of data points because that's all she had available.
Okay.
And I think it's because everybody was going locally because nobody was getting on a plane. And that's obviously since changed because people are flying again. So they're going to Aruba, or in this area, they're going to Aruba, they're going to Bahamas, they're going to Puerto Rico, they're going overseas. So people are traveling again, and it's the short-term rental market is taking a hit because of it.
I noticed that. It's funny, and like all those Airbnb groups on Facebook and everything, you see everybody's freaking out. And like we've talked about this, all three of us, multiple times. Like, well, when you're underwriting these deals, the people that were underwriting it off of the last 2 years, and they can't make it work off of like a long-term rental, if those numbers don't work, that's going to be a definite pain point for sure. And I guarantee you there's already a lot of people like that, and that'll probably flush out. I think even early on it when it started, if they had sold, they probably still would have done fine. But I think as they hold on to that and people do travel more, I'm very interested to see kind of what happens with that, because that industry blew up the last 2 years. And then you see all of the experts that are online telling you, dude, take my Airbnb course and all of these things. And it's like, well,
all these 21-year-olds who are like, they're just getting into it. They just got time
for sure. It's like, you ever see Vegas Vacation? It's like, put $1 in, win a car, put $1 in, win a car, put $1 in, win a car. It's like, well, no, you were just like in the best market ever for this. And now it changes. But I was thinking too, you could do corporate housing. You could do the traveling nurse. You could try a bunch of different strategies. And then, I mean, if you really had to, you could sell it if you bought it right. And if you didn't want to sell it, I don't know if you could, I'm sure you could float the long-term rental. Even let's say, like, talk about worst case, because you have multiple deals now, or you have multiple rentals, and maybe some people don't, but you have multiple rentals. So if that one is not doing great, the other good one carries it. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not catastrophic.
That's just like with my multi-unit. Like when one of them didn't pay, the other two carried it.
Yeah.
Like it's just hedging your potential losses. And that's a lot of people, like, I would never buy a short-term rental based on short-term rental numbers. I would buy it based upon long-term number rentals. Because worst case scenario, you want to be able to fall back on something versus just taking a loss.
For sure. And I mean, you don't want anybody to lose houses, but I would think that would be like one of the biggest stress points out of all this is just people kind of not buying right and stuff like that. So what else do we got? Anything else you want to talk about?
I was talking to my in-laws were here yesterday. We were hanging out, and then I went and saw my parents today, and we had the same conversation about Maryland is now going to be won't tax your pension state. But the caveat was you have to be 55 years old and older to retire. So I retire at 47 in a couple of years, and I would have to pay regular taxes for 7 years if I stayed in Maryland. So I'm looking at other places like Delaware, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, everywhere else, even if it's for a couple of years. So I see areas like this is one of the things you got to pay attention to the politics. So if that changes, that means Maryland will be a more in-demand state, probably near the beaches. Because if you go 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes up the road from Ocean City, Maryland, you are in Dewey Beach, Rehoboth Beach, Bethany Beach, Lewes, Delaware, and it's all these places that are not taxing your pension. So I think that if this does go through, that especially for everybody, not just for first responders, I think that there's going to be a growth in price of housing because people will want to retire to the beach. So my in-laws are talking about moving there with us, my mom and dad. They said the same thing today, like maybe if I have kids that they'll come with us as well. And it's like everybody wants to live near the water. It's a quieter community. So I think it'd be a good place to pay attention to the politics going on.
Well, I was going to say, and that's the thing too, you brought it up earlier as far as like, legislation and what happens for elections and stuff like that. I mean, you could just, even if they're not actively investing or a business, whatever you're doing, business, investing, whatever it is, pay attention to the legislation and then think about it, like think that through, right? How does this affect, for us, it's mostly real estate. How does this affect real estate? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? All of those things. Because those big time, you have these large hedge funds and stuff like that. They're analyzing this kind of stuff all the time and they're trying to get ahead of it. You just kind of have to think like they do, like what are they looking at? And so when I hear that, I'm like, oh, there you go. You're probably going to get a ton of people on fixed incomes, probably a lot of people with government pensions. So you're going to, it's definitely going to increase value. Look at Florida now. Everybody's going there. They're paying cash for those houses. You have a lot of retirees who are on some type of pension or they're retired, and it's great for the area. So that's huge. I'd be nice if California did that, but I don't.
Oh my God, it'd be great. I think people will actually go back to California instead of leaving it.
They have to at some point, right, to get people to come back. So
did you look at the McKee's report where people are migrating to and leaving from and going to?
No.
I looked at it over briefly, and I was like, the influx of people into places like South Dakota, which surprised me. Texas and Florida were obvious. Alabama was a little bit of a surprise. But they're leaving places like, obviously, New York, Seattle, or Seattle, Washington, Portland, Washington, Portland, Oregon, California, obviously. And I was like, those are the obvious one, but you see other places migrating from small towns. And it's the migration move this past during COVID. I think people were just starting to realize I want to get away from a major city, especially if I work an office job and I can work remotely. One of my buddies left the DC area and sold his condo and moved up to the Great Lakes in Michigan. And he paid the same price he sold his condo for down here for a waterfront property up there. And he's like, never been happier. I come back to DC. I think he has to come back twice a month. We'll fly back for $150 round trip on this cheap airline. And he's like, dude, I can go to a hotel, get an Uber for cheaper than it would cost me to stay down there. So the migration is real. Like, it's just people who are smart enough to look and see if there's opportunities somewhere else.
It's true. I mean, that's why Boise blew up so much, especially during that, because everybody's getting out of California, all those states, and they were all flocking to Boise because there was a lot more at that time. It's crazy. There was not, it wasn't super crowded. It's beautiful. You could do a ton of stuff outside. And it was just attracting a ton of people. I think it still is, but it just got so expensive. I think some of those people are getting priced out. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff has changed over the last 2 years. And I think a lot of that stuff is permanent. Like, I was talking to one of my buddies. I have not had a desk job in a very long time, but I was talking to him. I'm like, if I lost my job today, I don't think I could go back and do an office because it's been so long. No. I just would probably find something else to do. And nothing wrong with it. I would probably go look in the trades or something to where I could at least be outside, right? And I was saying, how are you going to get all these people who have been out of their office for the last 2 years to willingly want to go back and do an office and have to sit there for 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week? I think for the people that have been out, I don't know how you put that genie back in the bottle. And I think that's why a lot of these, these areas in, like you mentioned, secondary, tertiary markets were so appealing, because during that time period, everybody was flocking there. They were going and going and going. And I think a lot of it's already happened. So I'm curious to see if the trend continues. I'm sure it will, just not at the pace that we saw in the last 2 years. I think gasoline was poured on that fire for the last 2 years. It was like, now is the time to do this. We've talked about this for years. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So I definitely think that's a trend. And as far as, I know you said that you were going to look at development and stuff like that, and I'll put you on the spot. Have you been studying for your contractor's license?
Oh yeah. I've actually got Quizlet. So my goal this month was to retake my get my contractor's license just for tax write-off. Like, I don't want to do work for anybody. It's 100% selfish of me to have tax write-offs. And anybody I hire, then I sub it out to them, and it's a tax write-off for me. But there's an app called Quizlet, and it just shows maybe.
Yeah, that's how I got through medic school.
It was just, somebody has 191 terms of flashcards already made, and I just go through there and flip through them, and I just take my little tests. But it's all stuff like, I've been a handyman for years. Most of the stuff I've been around the trades, all the trades, for as long as I can remember. So it's just a lot of the questions are going to be legalities. But once I get that, then it's on to the next thing. And before we move on past development, I think that a lot of municipalities need to look at changing office space and zoning into something like micro housing. And I would love to find a place that would be willing to do that, because the office space is a dying breed. I think DC has some of the most vacant office space in the DC metro area in the country. And I know at least one area or one building they're going to turn into micro apartments. And I think it's a great idea. So just like reusing some of these old big box stores like Kmart and turning them into storage units. There's one that I was driving by the other day that I have in mind. I just want to talk to the municipality and see if they'd be willing to let me rezone it for what I want to do with it. But yeah, like, it's just getting creative like everything else. But yes, I've been studying. Have you been running numbers on a lot of these storage unit facilities?
Yeah, I've been trying. It's hard because, you ask a lot of it without having relationships yet. I'm just, I'm asking on a lot of these groups and I'm getting them. And then I shouldn't say it's hard. It's just like time consuming, but I notice I'm getting faster and faster and faster at doing it. And you can kind of see earlier and earlier what a deal is. But that market's interesting too, because there's still a lot of enthusiasm in that market. That's what's kind of trippy in that market for sure. There's people that are buying at or above ask still. But I really like it. The more and more I do it, I like the numbers of it. Alex Pardo had a good podcast that I listened to this morning, and they were saying like, hey, if you raise the rent on, they were talking about one of their specific facilities. They're like, hey, if you raise the rent $10 for each unit, we're going to receive, like, it was like $170,000 increase in value based off of that $10 rent increase. And they were talking about how many flips it would normally take to do that. So yeah, I've been doing a ton of research. I paid for that course I was telling you about. I'm going through that course. Ian, who's been on our podcast before and is in our group, he has a lot of stuff on there. He teaches some stuff too, so that's kind of cool. And then I don't think we've had Terry Royce on yet. I know we had talked about it, but he has a lot of good info on there as well. And then we have some guys in the group who actually sent me some leads too. So I will finish calling those this week and kind of see if I can make anything happen. But yeah, it's fun. It's new, so it's exciting. It's not single family. So you know how it is. Like, you switch something, we talk about squirrel, and I'm like, oh, cool, this is new. I don't know anything about this. I'm going to dive in. So I'm ripping through podcasts, ripping through lessons. And then I get to, look at these properties, kind of put it to test, and I'm getting better at it. And you know what, by the time I always am thinking, by the time I'm actually really good at this, stuff will start to appear that okay, that's a deal. And that's a deal. And that's a deal. But yeah, it's totally new for me. Most of the stuff I had never done before. Like, I understood cap rate, stuff like that. And there's just a lot of things. Like, we were talking about forecasting. You don't forecast really in single family. You're not thinking, hey, what's the population around here before I buy this house? That's a big thing for storage, is what's your 1, 3, and 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, and then sometimes 7 mile radius population. And then you're calculating your square footage for, it needs X amount of square footage per person in this radius in order for it to work. And so it's been fun. Like I said, I haven't heard back on my offers. I have more I have to put in today after we do this, and then just kind of see. They're a lot cheaper than I thought they would be too. I'm sure in California where I live, they're super expensive, but most of them are, $500,000-$600,000 and less for a bunch of units. So it's attainable. And like I said, it's exciting and it's cool to be doing it in that accountability group, just because it kind of keeps you a little bit more honest.
I've looked at, I've obviously looked at the storage unit facilities, and it seems like there's probably like a couple hundred people in that arena versus like tens of thousands in single family. I've been looking at ground up development for storage units, because you can get an SBA loan and do it. I need to learn more about it. I would like to have something that's already making money, but I think there's places that haven't been developed yet that also can make some money. Like my uncle is a town manager in a small town in Western Maryland or Eastern Maryland and Eastern Shore, and he said there's only one storage unit facility and it's small and it's full all the time. And I was like, what will it take for me to get approval to build one? So I'm just curious. I don't know what I don't know, and that's what scares me. Just like residential with people not starting out, but it's something that you can obviously learn. I won't have cash coming in, but it's just challenge yourself. I think that's one of the things I think a lot of the people who are moving forward in their endeavors, like, they're curious and they get answers. But a lot of the people that don't move forward because they're not curious and they don't look up answers, they're just stagnant. They don't care. Like, they just let life happen to them. They don't take life and grab about the balls and drag it to where they want it to go.
They just throw their hands up like, oh, I don't know how to do that, or I've never done that before. And it's like, well, like, all this stuff is problem solving. And if you can't problem solve, it's going to be really tough to be successful at anything. And that's why I think it's perfect for a lot of our jobs. Like, I've never been a cop before, obviously, but like, for us, for sure, firemen, you're problem solving all day long. We go on runs, and from start to finish, you're putting a puzzle together and you're problem solving. And I think that's why a lot of us, when you get outside, if a lot more guys realize that, like, hey, you have a skill that a lot of people really don't have. Like, we're faced with the problem. How do you fix it? And a lot of the time it's under time constraints. So you have to start thinking, like, what am I going to do right now? And I think it helps a lot of us be able to jump a little bit quicker than most people is we have that pressure on us to make a decision, follow it through. And a lot of the times it's like, if you're doing an auto extrication, try this. Oh crap, that didn't work. All right, let's do this. Let's try the A post, let's try the B post. Let's figure this out. And at the end, it's like, oh, it took us 5 tries the first time. We figured out what we need to do. So now when you see a similar situation, you're ready. You know your plan of attack when you see it. And I think if more people focus on that portion of it and realize that, especially obviously our target audience, who we want to help is first responders, we have that skill set that not a ton of people have.
I agree. So we're going longer than we anticipated. But
I know. I just saw that.
So before we hopped on this podcast, I was actually looking at my stocks because I was listening to a podcast. I was working on a motor before I hopped on here, and I was just listening to like, what's your money doing for you kind of concept. And I was like, what is my money doing for me? Like, let me look at my stocks and just for 5 minutes, let me just look at see how it's doing. And obviously stocks have been dog shit for the last 2 years, for the most part, 3 years. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sell these many shares of this stock, and I can do more with that money than the stock market's doing. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense for me to have the money sitting there just going stagnant, just like putting money under your mattress. Like, I'm going to do something with this money and put it somewhere else. It could be anything from like buying into a deal to like, I just had one of the guys that was at the Baltimore meetup. He asked me for it's $55,000. You get 5% ownership of the property. And then you get a return every year as long as he owns the property. And there's projections of pro forma. They're only at like 50% occupancy. So there's a lot of room to grow and there's room to expand on top of that. And then he had a whole breakdown of how he's going to do that. And I was like, if I just gave him, $55,000, whether it be from my Roth IRA or my savings account, or I took a loan out, like I have a guaranteed 5% return every year. And then I was looking, I was like, okay, well, what's my HELOCs looking like? Like one of my HELOCs is like 3.25%. I was like, so if I take out 3.5% or 3.25% there and gave it to him at 5%, as long as the numbers make sense, like I'll get the spread. And like, it might be a difference of 1.5%, but it's more than a savings account. It's more than a bank account right now. So it's not the best use of the money, but it's other ways to make money with your money rather than having it take a hit with the inflation and all these government printed monies and everything else.
Yeah, and the good news is it's your money, so you can decide as long as you're happy with the return, go for it. But it also gets you a piece in something that you're interested in too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I did it with Ian, because I was like, it wasn't a big sum of money, but it was like, I just want to do it and kind of see how they do the syndication, how do they update all their investors, how are they doing all this CapEx and all these improvements. It's like,
and you learned a lot, right?
Yeah, because I mean, they send you these quarterly updates. They let you know what they're doing. You get to see how it's panning out. And I'm like, okay, so like a lot of this stuff, that they talk about, you can kind of see it go through the fruition of it. And I like it. I'm glad I did it. I mean, I was never a big fan of syndication. So when that opportunity came along, it wasn't a significant capital expense. I'm like, I'm just going to do it and watch it go through and kind of see what happens. And same thing. It was sitting in my IRA. I was not doing anything with it. And I'm losing money every month technically right now with inflation. Like I need to get the money out of these accounts, and you need to deploy the cash. Otherwise, you're losing money every month. So that's why I did that. And then that's why I just did the note today. I saw our mutual friend post something for a deal. And I'm like, I'll do that deal. I mean, let's do it. That money's sitting in that account. And it's just, like I said, I don't have any other use for it. I'm not a big fan of the stock market, to be honest with you. I just don't.
I agree.
I like something that I like things I understand, and I've been doing real estate long enough is that I understand it. So that's it, man. Well, you want to wrap it up since we're over?
Yeah. First Responder Financial Freedom, chopping it up. Tyler Thrush, me, Aaron Foster. 45 minutes of us just jaw jacking. Thanks for spending time with us, and see us on YouTube, podcast, Facebook. Join the group, ask questions, invite friends. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Let's fucking go.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.